Good afternoon and welcome to IBA's daily news program. It's Wednesday, January 6th. I'm Aryeh O'Sullivan and this is IBA News broadcasting from Jerusalem. 23-year-old Captain Yishai Jesse Rosales will be laid to rest at 1 a.m. Thursday at the Mount Herzl Military Cemetery in Jerusalem. Rosales was killed and another soldier injured in a training accident at the Tselim Army Base in southern Israel yesterday afternoon after a mortar shell strayed from its target and exploded near a group of soldiers. Rosales and a fellow soldier were hit by flying shrapnel. The officer was pronounced dead on the site and the second soldier was lightly wounded. Military exercises, which were briefly halted, resumed this morning. Meanwhile, an investigation is underway and its findings are expected to be presented to the Chief of Staff in the coming days. Rosales, a religious soldier, made Aliyah from Mexico several years ago and lived outside of Jerusalem in the religious community of Beit Meir. He served as a company commander in the Haredi Netzach Yehuda battalion of the Kfir Infantry Brigade. His family is slated to arrive in the country later today to take part in the funeral. The massive manhunt for Israeli Arab terrorist Nashat Milhem continued today with a large number of forces deployed in the north of the country, particularly in the Arab towns that border the Green Line. Police entered some dozens homes of Milhem's relatives living in a cluster of Arab towns known as the Triangle with the hope of finding some leads, but so far to no avail. The expanded manhunt moved north after similar searches in the Gush Dan area proved fruitless. Police Chief Ronnie El-Sheikh hinted yesterday that there was no imminent danger in Tel Aviv and urged residents to lower tensions. Since Friday's deadly attacks, in which 3 people were killed, the terrorist, who is originally from the northern Arab town of Arara, has remained at large. Authorities are warning that he is armed, dangerous, and capable of striking back. Former National Security Advisor Yossi Cohen officially became the 12th head of Israel's revered Mossad agency today. A change of guard ceremony happened yesterday, and the Israeli government security echelon took place. Cohen replaces Tamir Pardo. At the ceremony, President Reuven Rivlin said that while he is unable to talk about Pardo's activities, especially during the past 5 years that he headed the spy agency, Pardo brought the Mossad to a technological forefront, but always ensured to remain a human intelligence organization. Yossi Cohen, nicknamed the Model because of his handsome appearance and meticulous dress sense, joined the Mossad in the early 1980s. He was appointed to head the National Security Council in 2013, and prior to that served as former deputy chief in the Mossad and also headed the spy agency's Somit division that operates agents. Raised in Jerusalem, he is married and has 4 children, observes a religious lifestyle, and is said to be very knowledgeable about the Mishnah and debates of Jewish wisdom. The Knesset Interior Environmental Committee today had an urgent debate to discuss how to deal with the phenomena of illegal weapons in Israel, especially those in the Arab sector. Committee head Knesset member David Biton said the Arab towns and villages have turned into Israel's Wild West. Mani Yitzhaki, the commander of the Police Intelligence and Investigation Unit, said that while police have succeeded in confiscating thousands of weapons, the aim is to lay their hands on those manufacturing the weapons and transferring them to the Arab sector. A senior IDF officer present at the debate revealed that the past year, 67 weapons were stolen from the army, and only a third of them were ever recovered. Minister of Internal Security, Gilad Erdan, said 90% of the illegal weapons found in the north were stolen from the army. Arab Knesset members present at the debate stressed that they have repeatedly demanded that steps be taken to enforce the law against the unlicensed gun owners in the Arab towns. The Army has come up with a solution to protect soldiers against knife attacks. In the coming weeks, the IDF will distribute a newly designed neck guard to protect soldiers serving in the West Bank. The Army's Personal Protection and Equipment Directorate was asked to create a device that would strike a balance between maximum protection and the comfort of the soldier. The neck guard sits on beneath the soldier's regular protective vest and has already been handed out to some units serving in the territories. Mourners in the West Bank held funeral processions for Palestinian terrorists who were shot dead by Israeli forces in recent weeks after carrying out attacks inside Jerusalem and the West Bank. Since the start of the week, Israel transferred 27 bodies to the PA. This despite the ongoing upsurge in violence, which has now entered its 4th month. In the past, Israel kept the bodies of slain terrorists as a punitive measure or in order to exchange them for the remains of soldiers. However, last month, Defense Minister Moshe Ya'alon reversed that policy and agreed to return the bodies on condition that the Palestinians keep their funerals modest and non-violent. Concern is growing among Israeli officials over the future of the Palestinian Authority. Opposition MK Tzipi Livni has called on the Knesset's Foreign Affairs and Defense Committee to convene an immediate session to review the predictions that the PA is on the verge of collapse. Should this happen, officials have expressed concern that law and order in the West Bank will deteriorate, bringing disaster for the Palestinians, and there are potentials of Hamas takeover. Such a scenario could force Israel to take charge of both security and civilian affairs in areas currently patrolled by the PA. The grim assessment comes in the wake of repeated rumors of a political crisis within the Palestinian government and continued warnings by PA Chairman Mahmoud Abbas, who threatened to break down in the absence of peace process. IDF forces remain on high alert along the northern border following this week's roadside bombing by Hezbollah in an attempt to avenge the death of Samir Kuntar in Damascus 2 weeks ago. Well, joining us now from our Haifa studio to discuss regional events is Iran Singer, the Arab Affairs reporter and expert for Israel Radio. Iran, thanks for joining us.
Hi, good evening.
Hezbollah is up to its neck in fighting in Syria. Does it really want to do more, draw Israeli blood, or do you think that this roadside bombing is enough?
Well, it was very essential for Hezbollah to make it clear that even though they have many problems right now with facing ISIS and other militias inside Syria, and the growing crisis they have across the border between Lebanon and Syria, it was very essential for them to make it clear that they still have the possibility, the capability to confront Israel. The leader of Hezbollah, Sheikh Hassan Nasrallah, said only more than 2 weeks ago that the revenge will eventually show up, and this is what happened 2 days ago. In other words, we promised that we will revenge, and we did revenge, even though they said that they were hurting Israeli soldiers and that a military armed car was attacked and was damaged in this incident. But eventually, this maybe if it didn't have the results that they wished it would have, this was their revenge in their eyes.
Well, let's take a look at the dramatic events that are taking place in the Arab world. This crisis between Saudi Arabia and Iran, it's deepening, and Saudi allies, Bahrain and Sudan, are cutting off ties with Tehran. Well, how volatile is this situation?
This is a major story. This is, I think, one of the biggest stories we had here in the region in the last years. It's not only a fighting that is going on between the Saudis and the Iranians. This is not a private story, a private conflict between them. This is a major conflict between Shiite and Sunni Muslims, because when you have countries, not like countries in the Gulf region, like Saudi Arabia, or Bahrain, or Kuwait, we're also talking about Sudan in Africa, we're talking about Djibouti, we're talking about Sunni Muslim countries who stand along with Saudi Arabia, who are supporting Saudi Arabia in its conflict with the Iranians, saying to the Iranians, we had enough. We are no longer able to have your activities in the region, your violent activities, your terrorist activities in the region. This is the best time, or this is the time that we are going to show the Iranians that we're not joking. So we're cutting the diplomatic ties with them in order to make it clear that this time it's not a game. The thing is that we're also talking about the timing. It's only a few weeks before that the sanctions, the international sanctions on Iran are lifted. And this is another problem for the Iranians, because if we are going to see a growing conflict, a growing crisis between Saudi Arabia and its allies against Iran, the Iranians will find it very difficult, or the West will find it very difficult, to make things as calm as it wanted to have in the first place.
Well, I understand that Iraq is actually trying to mediate between Saudi Arabia and Iran.
Yes, the Iraqi government is, on the one hand, trying to mediate, and they said that if this crisis will go on, it will affect the whole region, not only Iran and Saudi Arabia. On the other hand, the Iraqis are pro-Iranian. The government in Baghdad said today that the decision made by the Saudi authorities to execute the high-ranked Shiite Nimr al-Nimr in Saudi Arabia was wrong. And the minute he said so, he was supporting the Iranians and not the Saudis. And how can the Iraqi government can be a mediator if they support one of the sides?
Let me ask you, you talk about Sudan, you talk about Iraq. Egypt is strangely silent. Why is that?
I think that in the end, we'll see that the Egyptians will stand with the Saudis in this conflict. They need the Saudis. We are talking about a whole new bloc, if you wish, that the Saudis are now making, or now they're planning. This is the Islamic bloc, the Sunni Islamic bloc that will stand against the Shiite Islamic bloc headed by the Iranians. The government of Egypt is financially supported by Saudi Arabia because of the crisis that we saw in Egypt in last years. They will have no other alternative but to support. I don't know if they're going to cut their ties with the Iranians, but they're sure going to support them. Look what happened with Jordan only a few minutes ago. The Jordanian government they have not cut the relations with the Iranians, but they're condemning what the Iranians did to the Saudi embassy.
And what happened in Bahrain?
Bahrain, the same thing. Well, Bahrain, the connections between the Kingdom of Bahrain and the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, the connections are much better or much stronger than in other cases. Bahrain is the little sister of Saudi Arabia. And,
but I understand that Hezbollah had some kind of presence there?
Exactly. 2 days after the decision made in Bahrain to cut the ties with the Iranians, we are now hearing that another terrorist group has been caught in Bahrain. They were planning to have some terrorist activities inside the Kingdom of Bahrain. And the interesting thing is that according to the Ministry of Internal Affairs in Bahrain, they're saying that Hassan Nasrallah himself, the leader of Hezbollah, was giving them $20,000, this specific terrorist group, in order to have their terrorist activities go on in the Bahrain kingdom.
Well, Eran Singer, the IBA Affairs reporter for Israel Radio, thanks so much for your insight. Always a pleasure to have you.
Thank you.
The country's National Council for Building and Planning has approved the establishment of a new Druze town in the north, the first to be built since the founding of the state in 1948. The move was initiated by Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, and the town will be located in the lower Galilee region near Tiberias in the Naphtali Estate area, south of Karnei Hittin National Park and north of the Golani Industrial Zone and Route 77. 2 months ago, the council took the decision to build a Druze town with the support of the heads of Israel's Druze communities and religious councils. The move also received the support of Knesset members, and the initial plan calls for the construction of 400 housing units, which will later be expanded. Earlier this week, Netanyahu said that the step is of great importance and will help to advance the Druze sector. The Druze community has bound its fate to the state of Israel. The proportion of enlistment in the IDF is among the highest in the state, and many Druze serve in the Army's combat units, he said. Nature officials are opposing the site since they say it encroaches on the historic Horns of Hittin Hill battlefield where Saladin defeated the Crusaders in 1187. Well, did you know that Israel has its own Stonehenge? It's in the Golan Heights and called Rujim El Hiri. Archaeologists have returned to the site to try and unravel its mysteries. The complex is made up of 5 concentric circles with a massive burial chamber in the middle. Most estimates say it was constructed about 5,000 years ago, about the same time England's Stonehenge was being constructed, only this one was made with smaller stones. Archaeologists are looking for clues to discover who built it and are trying to decipher its possible astrological significance. The complex is in an army training ground, but the adventuresome can visit it on the weekends.
Our think that it's some nomads that came and built this huge monument for their rituals or for the tomb of a high-level person. But what we don't know, the dates are around 2,000 years. You know, some say it's from the early Bronze Age, some say it's from the late Bronze Age. We just don't know. It's an enigmatic site. We know some bits of information, but we don't have the whole picture yet.
In financial news, shares were down across the board on the Tel Aviv Stock Exchange, while the shekel was mixed in foreign currency trading. Here's the latest afternoon numbers. Turning to the weather, and the forecast for tomorrow calls for Partly cloudy skies with a rise in temperatures. Rain is expected in the north and will likely spread to the Negev. Here's a look at the forecasted highs and lows at home and abroad for the next 24 hours. Thank you for being with us this afternoon. Hope you'll join us again tomorrow when I'll be back here to bring you the latest breaking news from Israel. Same time, same channel. Till then, I'm Aryeh O'Sullivan wishing you a pleasant evening and shalom from Jerusalem.